Shalom from Jerusalem. This is Uriel, Independent News, Jerusalem, Israel. What do you think about Abu Mazen that approached the United Nations this past Thursday and requested an upgrade on his status in the world?
Well, an upgrade of a terrorist organization to a sponsored terrorist state is of course what the United Nations is fond of. After all, the United Nations recognizes the Vatican as an observer state, which is inherently anti-Semitic. Recently, the current Pope, for example, incorporated the element within the Catholic Church that was responsible for the Inquisition. So it does not surprise me that they did this clearly anti-Semitic and anti-Jewish act. It is interesting to note that the United States and its tributary states and Canada and the Czech Republic were the only countries besides Israel, nine countries in all, but really 4 if you don't include the tributary states to the United States, that participated in a positive vote for Israel. And I think the reason for this is because the United Nations is an inherently anti-Semitic Christian organization. And while it has elements of the Arab world in it, the Arab world and the Persian bloc are essentially allied with the Vatican. This is so because recently the various churches within Jerusalem and the representatives of the Vatican have been making interreligious ties. So it's really an attempt to de-Judaify Israel. It is not so much for a Palestinian state, because the reality is that a Palestinian state will never happen, even if all the Jews were to leave voluntarily, because there are several claims by it from Egypt, Lebanon, and Jordan. Additionally, there is the claim by the various Catholic churches, both the Byzantium Church, which is the Russian Orthodox Church, and the Vatican, as to the Kingdom of Acre, the Latin Kingdom of Acre, of which they have representatives, official military orders, and they have various organizations, for example the Knights of Malta, that lay claim to the city of Jerusalem as an independent kingdom. And there has been negotiations by these various churches into splitting up the various areas of Jerusalem. For example, the purchase of Mount Zion and the separation of the Dome of the Rock into a independent entity that is ruled by another Islamic caliphate. The main problem here has nothing to do with the Palestinian state, because the truth is most Arabs that live within the realm of Israel proper have good jobs. For example, their women are nurses or are pharmacists. This is a predominant field for them. They make very good money and indeed support the construction workers, which in general are Arabs. A lot of the small business, even in the old city, that are within the Jewish quarter happen to be happen to have Arab workers, and they make very good money. I've spoken to, in the Arab quarter, to a lot of very important Arabs, and although we can't say really that we are friends, the fact is they don't want Abbas. What they say of Abbas is that Abbas is basically Mafia Abbas. Abbas and Hamas, for example, are two Shiite and Sunni groups. they would wage war against one another if there was.
But let me ask you a question. Listen.
Yes.
Do you really think this Abu Mazen really wants peace when basically he has not recognized, when he did this speech at the United Nations, he did not even recognize Israel or Jews as a sovereign nation or state. So how can the United Nations recognize, or the nations that voted in favor, basically favor these so-called Palestinians when they basically don't recognize Israel, don't recognize a Jewish state or a homeland, yet they approach the United Nations and they want an upgrade on their status as a non-member status at the UN?
Well, we have to first understand what an upgrade to a non-member status is. It simply means a state that's recognized by the United Nations that does not have the right
to vote.
To vote, yes. But the United Nations, as I said, is essentially it's essentially a group of nations with no sovereignty over independent countries. Especially, for example, the state of Israel. Israel does not recognize the sovereignty of the United Nations over the state of Israel. There are countries who do. Israel is completely sovereign, does not recognize, for example, the nuclear arms treaties, does not recognize anything which would encroach on its sovereignty or security.
Well, many nations that basically are sitting under the UN banner basically don't favor Israel at all. As you know, most of the nations that voted against Israel are anti-Israel.
Well, when you say anti-Israel, I think the real term is anti-Jew, anti-Jewish values. And by Jewish values, I mean anti-Judaism. Quite frankly, the existence of the State of Israel is an inherent, existential threat to both Islam and Christianity, and this is what it's really the main point. Or as we say in Yiddish, it's the ikar, it's the point. Because the existence of a sovereign Jewish nation with the chief rabbi is contrary to what both Christianity and Islam say in their holy works. So to conclude, I do not think that a completely secular Jewish state would be outside of the realm of what they desire. But a state that has any type of Judaism within it is out of the question. And thank you very much for your time.
This is Uriel, Independent News, Jerusalem, Israel. Shalom.